welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's guest is Dr. Ashton Fortin Higgins, and we're speaking on the Exclusive Pumping Institute. Dr. Ashton Fortin Higgins, Ph.D., is the founder and educator at the Exclusive Pumping Institute. The institute focuses on the education, training, and education of exclusively pumping breast milk. Dr. Ashton obtained her Ph.D. and Master's of Education in Human Sexuality Studies from Widener University, where her research focused on HIV education. Dr. Ashton received her 90-plus breastfeeding education hours from Mohawk College. She specifically consults with exclusively pumping individuals to establish proper breast flange sizing, appropriate scheduling, and other concerns related solely to exclusive pumping. Dr. Ashton also provides education and training to lactation health professionals to better understand exclusive pumping as it differs from at-breast consultations. She is passionate about exclusive pumping advocacy and seeks a level of acceptance for exclusive pumpers in that exclusive pumping is a valid feeding choice for infants in addition to nursing, supplementing, and formula. Welcome, Dr. Ashton, to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I'm super excited to have a platform here to certainly explain a little bit more about exclusive pumping.
Yes. So I'd love for us to start at the beginning and just share a little bit about who you are and how you created an institute that's all about exclusive pumping of breast milk.
Great. So my name is Dr. Ashton Fortin Higgins. I hold a Ph.D. and a Master's in Education in Human Sexuality, which I obtained at Widener University. Throughout that process, I focused a lot on HIV education and specifically at that time with older adults. But in the course of life, of course, having children, I have experienced some breastfeeding difficulties. And after my first, I experienced 6 months of triple feeding. So that's essentially where you're latching at breast, followed by bottle feeding, as well as pumping. So it was a very long 6 months for me, and something that I really didn't have a lot of support with regards to how to do it all. Sadly, the lactation nurse in the hospital and the lactation consultant in the hospital didn't really set me up for success. It was just keep trying, it'll eventually come. And 25 days it took for my daughter to latch was a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I just anticipated it was going to be this beautiful experience. I'm sure you've had, gone to prenatal classes. I know you mentioned you have a son, and it just really paints this beautiful picture about what it's going to be like. And when it doesn't actually occur that way, it's kind of like a really big culture shock. And then you're not quite too sure what to do. So
yeah, and I would say with all the, I see so many perinatal women in my practice. A lot of women are really focused on pregnancy and getting through the birth, and don't really maybe put a lot of focus on breastfeeding. It's like, oh, I'll figure it out after I give birth. But it's so helpful to have exposure prenatally, and to know that there are a lot of challenges, and it can be hard for a lot of women. I see that often in my office. And I also had that my own personal experience with challenges with breastfeeding. So it's a real thing.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think the reason why they do paint it to be such a beautiful picture is because I think there's just this huge fear in the medical community and lactation consultants about turning people to formula because it's so easily accessible. So I think it's a big piece of or the literature out there that really promotes the optimal breast milk as best or the ideal nutrition for that first year of life, that studies have shown over and over again that essentially it is a more health benefit in the long run, right? So I think if we turn to formula so easily, then, you're exposing the medical doctrine to way more health issues in the long run if people aren't giving an attempt at breastfeeding or breast milk. So I think in the long run, I can totally see why we're so prenatally exposed to breast, and breast is best, as they put it. And it's just painting such a beautiful picture. And you really want to have that beautiful bonding experience that if things start to go wrong, then you start to panic and then you're not quite too sure where to go.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So for me, that was definitely something that I wasn't ready to handle, really. At that point in time, when it took 25 days to latch, it was like excruciating. It was taxing on mental health.
You mean you could not get your daughter to latch on either breast for
No.
a single feed for almost a month?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That is, I mean, most women would just be like, this isn't working and I'm done. I'm out of here.
Believe me, there were a lot of times I really thought like that, but I was breastfed, and both my parents had great immunity, and like, you actually learn about how great the immunity is for your baby, and you're like, I got to give this to my kid. Like, I got to pull through and I got to do this. So that's really a big part of why I kind of tried to push through. The lactation consultant I had in the hospital said that it took her grandkids 29 days to latch. So I guess I beat that record. But that was kind of something I was striving for, that maybe it takes a month to happen, and it did, but it was still a lot of struggle. She wasn't overly interested for a long span of time. And to the point where she actually, I didn't know if she would latch or not as months would go by. I recall specifically an occurrence at an actual mall where we were actually in a nursing room. And I remember just the fear of, is she going to take it? Isn't she going to take it? And all these women around that are just happily nursing. And I had this huge fear of, is it going to happen or not? Or am I going to be embarrassed by her pushing away? So there's just so much involved that I can tell you that 6 months was excruciating for me and taxing for me mental health wise, that I didn't think, I mean, I got through it. I made the 6-month goal. I really wanted a year, but 6 months was all I could do. And I vowed that I would not do this over again. In fact, I thought we were just going to have one child. So when I had a second one, you better believe I was overly prepared. I went to all those breastfeeding, all those prenatal classes. I asked all the questions, but all the questions seemed to get pushed to like, oh, you can come see at the end of the presentation, again, because they're trying to paint such a beautiful picture and don't want to discourage anybody. And this is not discouraging by any means. I know a lot of exclusive pumping individuals out there would agree that they would have loved to have some sort of prenatal exposure. So this is just something to kind of think about if things aren't going right. It's not that you might not be able to have a successful nursing relationship, but some people do choose to do this as a way to still provide that great benefits that you get from human milk. So at the end of the day, when I had my second, and we breastfed for a month, and it was slow gains, but slow gains were still good gains. And then by week 4, he was losing weight again. So here I was put in the same position, and I would not put myself through that again. Those 6 months again, I couldn't do. So for me, I tried the supplemental nursing system, which is essentially you have that little tube, and it's like stuck to your breast and your nipple, and the baby just latches there. And I tried that for about 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks. And it was just a mess. It was a pain. I know a lot of exclusive pumpers really feel a lot of pressure with triple feeding because it's cumbersome. You're looking at 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes per breast while you're trying to nurse. And then you have to feed your baby by bottle. And then you're following that with a suggested 15-minute pump time by lactation consultants. And that's often because they don't want the process to get too long for you, but it does get very long and tiresome. So at some point you have to come to a conclusion that, maybe at breast just isn't going to happen for me. And when you've made that choice, it is a way freeing because you're letting go of all that feeling you had with nursing, but it's also a very big grieving process, which no one really talks about as well. So for me, essentially, it was just the choice to drop the nursing at that point. I'd given it my best. We tried it all. It was pretty much the nursing, the lactation consultants had said, this is kind of like all we can do for you. So when the lactation consultants are saying like, this is all we can do for you, this is pretty much it. So I had to do something for myself and my child. And we pumped away. So it was learning the challenges of that. And it's all self-taught online. It's the sad part. Like, that's the worst part, I guess.
So when you had the lactation consultants and you were like, okay, the nursing isn't working, I want to still pump and give my child express breast milk, they didn't give you any guidance of which pump to get and how often and kind of the schedule around that?
No, there really wasn't much about that. As I live in Canada, things are a little different pump wise. We don't naturally have the insurance coverage that often comes in the U.S. With regards to pumps, because in one case it's because we are fortunate enough here to have a longer maternity leave, and it's not necessary that you need a pump to go back to work. You should technically have the whole year to be able to nurse at breast or so forth. So I think
It's a year maternity leave?
I hate to admit it to you because I know it's a sensitive topic.
That's crazy.
It's about to get a little crazier because just before I had my son, you had the option to take 12 months or 18 months and pay a little, get a little less over the 18 months instead of 12. But
Wow.
Yeah, so I know it's a sore subject. I try not to bring that one up. But with regards to pumps, that's kind of why we don't typically get pumps covered the way that it is in the U.S.
So it's out of pocket.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the pumps covered by the U.S. are really very basic models. And I find that at least women that have any sort of means end up buying one out of pocket anyways. That's a higher quality, more efficient, and
right.
Like time is money.
Right. Exactly. And it's come so far. So, great for us exclusive pumpers. Now you're putting those Willows and LVs into your actual bra and you can go on about having your life. But at the same time, it's for me personally in circa 2018 as to when I had my son exclusively pumped, it was a bit of a different world. At that time, just to give you a little perspective with numbers, I had joined an exclusive pumping group online, the Canadian one. And at that time, the group was created in 2014 and it had about 162 of us in their total. Now, I just looked last night, that same group in 3 years, we're now up to 1,145. So imagine in like 4 years, the group grew 162 members, but in 3 years, it's now grown, an additional like 1,000. So it's growing super fast. Being bilingual also gives me an advantage of being in the French Canadian one too. And that one's growing even faster. That one has about 1,500 members, I think, about just under a year ago, and now it's up to almost 2,700. So it's growing at an alarming rate. And then there's just nothing out there for us except for online, self-taught, and these support groups online. I'm in mostly Facebook settings. And it's just sad that the education we're getting and we ask questions and we're often provided with information that's related to back at breast.
Oh, interesting. So that's obviously your inspiration of why you created your program that is really helping to support both women and lactation consultants on how to be an exclusive pumper.
Right, exactly. The big piece for me is I know that there's a lot of resources already out there online for exclusive pumpers, but and that's great because that's all we've had for so long. So we've kind of adapted to that. The issue becomes more with the lactation professionals, specifically lactation consultants, and how they kind of manage an exclusive pumping client, because our needs are essentially, in most cases, the research has kind of shown that we're not looking to go back at breasts, but in the lactation consultant's mind, it's so much easier. So why can't we try to flow you back to breast?
Right. So exclusive pumping is looked at as temporary until the baby can latch and then they go back.
Yeah. So, and if you're so lucky that you've worked through it and you can get baby back at breast, that's great. And at the end of the day, many people would choose, many people who have come to this conclusion would choose to have at breast if they could. There are a select few that choose this right off the get-go, which I could talk about in a little bit. But essentially, when you go to that lactation consultant, they're looking to like, how can I get you back at the breast? And how can we do that? Where at the end of the day, we're looking for like, how can you help me with a schedule? How can you help me with pumping more, pumping less? And how do I use my pump? And all this stuff where we're not really getting that. And especially a big one is flange sizing. So that's huge. And most people, I know with my first, I'm pretty sure I was using the wrong flange size probably the whole time. And I just didn't even realize that was the thing. I didn't even use Facebook with my first one for anything. So that was just isolating, being a triple feeder in its own. I was lucky I had something the second time around. So I can just imagine that there are so many people that open their pumps, just use it. And some people will say, wow, the pump's not really doing much for me. That's probably because they're not using the right flange size.
Right. That makes a big difference in how well the pump can extract the milk.
Right, exactly. And what's ultimately happening is lactation consultants, as I mentioned, as I'm going through this education and so forth, there's so little in the actual texts that we learn from about pumping itself. I mean, it'll mention you should be looking at correct flange sizing, but it doesn't speak to how you do that. And I think it's because they're just relying on what maybe the manufacturers have out there. But even then, sometimes, in my personal opinion, it's a little bit larger on the millimeters than it should be. It should be, but they're just relying on that. And I've had clients tell me that they've gotten looked at in the hospital and it was based on just breast size, not the nipple at all. So like there's just so much out there that needs to really be tailored a little bit better for exclusive pumpers and even just anyone going back to work and needs to pump appropriately. I think this is something that should be offered as a service just in general. By lactation consultants. I mean, in the US, you get, I'm not sure, I think it differs depending on your profession, but roughly about 3 to 6 weeks. Is it not for mat leave or?
It's typically 3 months.
It's 3 months? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I know
unless you're self-employed like myself, and then you don't get any.
Right.
So if you work for a large corporation, it is typically 3 months. And I see that they're doing more paternity leave as well. So dads are also getting 3 months.
Right.
Typically.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, you've got those 3 months to kind of get it in order and figure out your pump. But I've even heard from others that they say that the lactation consultant says, oh, yeah, maybe a week or two before you go back, you should kind of look at how you use that and stuff. I mean, I would use that time as a professional to kind of say, hey, how about we get you sized right now? This might be roughly what you are. So consider that when you get back. And maybe we do a follow-up visit to examine that again. Because the nipple itself does actually change throughout the process. It's not just one size the whole time, and both can be different. So you might be stuck forking out the money for 2 different sizes depending on your nipples. But it is truly an amazing thought process that there isn't more out there for this. And that's, like you mentioned, it is really why I streamline this. And being from an education background, my master's in education just kind of put me at a better spot. And then the human sexuality even better, because I've already been dealing with, sensitive topics for a long time now. And this is just one of those things where lactation is often a private matter for a lot of individuals and breasts in general. So this is just not something that was uncomfortable for me to do and think of the different ways to discuss it. So I really just wanted to make it in a way that it was done in a place where people are getting actually someone who does education and actually knows how to streamline a course content properly, and do all the work that has to come with it. Not just, I know there's a lot of courses out there on just about anything now. But at the end of the day, I really wanted to make it for professionals, because I know that exclusive pumpers down the road are going to need those professionals to help them. Right now they're making do with what they have, but we're just missing so many pieces at the professional level that something needed to be done. And that's really where this stemmed from. And starting this, I started about, I would say, September of last year. So I haven't been in it long, but long enough to know that things need to change.
Yeah, exactly. There's such a need for this. And, I think it's awesome that you don't just work directly with women, but also training lactation consultants, because as we were mentioning, I think before we started recording, the training, even for like an IBCLC, is so focused on breastfeeding and not pumping, right? That, or if there is pumping, it's really like, oh, because you're back at work and you're not around your child, or maybe the first couple of weeks until that baby can latch and then they're on the breast, right? So understand that this is a whole nother option that could be a really good fit for certain dyads.
Right, exactly. And I think, I suppose this would be a good segue to kind of talk about other reasons why people might come to do this. For essentially, if people choose to do this prior to birth, some of the reasons they might think about that is sometimes there's still a sexualized thought over with breasts, and sometimes that just kind of leads to an uncomfortable thought of having your baby at breast. So I think for me personally, coming from a human sexuality background, there's no questions asked. I totally understand why that is something someone would think about doing. They get that the benefits of human milk is still very, very good. And this is just something, just a different way of providing their child with the human milk. Another reason why I find that some people might choose to do this, before they have the baby, is because there's such a high outlook for that bonding piece during feeding. And in some family dyads, it becomes very important that the partner also takes an equal role in the feedings. And I know that some people who have been, in lactation a long time are already thinking, but that's a totally different experience. But for some, it's just a collective experience that they want their partner to share in and have that shared equalized duty. And again, this is the family of 2021. So it wouldn't be an uncommon thought for some to want to do that. And also another reason why individuals might choose to exclusively pump is when we think about formula feeding. Some individuals actually, if you're gone from the get-go that formula feeding is the way you're going to do it, and for whatever reason, baby has some sort of intolerance to formula, at the end of the day, you might think, how can I make this easier for my child? I mean, you don't want to see your child in pain. You might actually choose to exclusively pump as a new way. You were never comfortable with nursing in the first place, but maybe you'd be comfortable with using a pump to do so. So there's just a lot of different reasons why people end up exclusively pumping. But a big part of it is really individuals who wanted to nurse their child and never got that opportunity, whether it be some sort of issue with the oral cavity of the baby, like a high cleft palate, for example, that would not allow you to do so. So sometimes you're robbed right from the beginning from even having that exposure to have that nursing experience. So that's one main reason. And so much so that in exclusive pumping groups, we're not able to discuss nursing in any way, shape, and form. It's a kind of a written rule for a lot of it. No nursing, no latching pictures. It's also a sore spot. So for those who've had the opportunity to start kind of in my position where I've started nursing for 4 weeks and then had to kind of keen off of that, I would never be able to really discuss that. So that's another issue, is that we don't have an open space to talk about that grief and talk about it the way we need to, because we're still trying to be very respectful to those who never had the chance. So it just becomes twofold. There's so much more into it that people don't really realize.
Yes. And I love that you're mentioning how there is a grieving for women that, really saw themselves nursing and for whatever reason weren't able to. And there's so many reasons. I'm even thinking of my sister's first child. The day she was born, found out she had Down syndrome, and with hypotonia, children with special needs, they typically don't have the motor ability to nurse. And so my sister had to be an exclusive pumper for several months, but with certainly not planning that, right? It was visualizing nursing her child. So when these things happen, it's quite shocking, right? And it's like, you have to kind of like figure out what are you going to do? What's next?
Right. Exactly. And for some, formula is a great option if it needs to be, but for some that we've just prioritized human milk on such a pedestal that's what was best for our babies and that's our choice. And how can we get it to them? And honestly, it comes to the point where you decide to exclusively pump. You spend all your spare time searching how to pump as if you don't have time already. Now you're spending all this time Googling this, Googling that. It's really just sad that it's come to that point where we can't actually go to the professionals. And I'm gathering there are some out there that probably are amazing. It's just, unfortunately, it's not, globally seen yet. Right. So we're just not getting the support in person that a lot of individuals would want. Briefly on the sizing piece, what'll happen often is people are joining these groups. Most recently I've seen on Facebook where they're joining groups and sending their breasts to complete strangers, like with, this person's not an insured person, but because they know how to size someone, they're doing it, either for free or at a cost. I don't know. And that worries me that we're just sending our stuff out there to someone who's, great at what they do, but they're not some sort of licensed professional that does it. I mean, it's kind of sad that it's coming to this. But it's just a whole bunch of packet of issues that I would love to be able to solve before it even gets to that point at this point, because it's kind of growing really fast, scary fast, in the sense that no support's really been there for them this whole time.
Right. So you started creating this support in September, and tell me who you've been working with.
Right.
since you started?
Yeah. So for me, I've been working with a lot of exclusive pumpers themselves with regards to, I created a program called ALAR, and it stands for Lactation Attitude Reassessment. And for me personally, it was really important to understand exclusive pumping at a collective level. So what's happening in these support groups right now is when people ask questions, people can only provide answers based on their experience. And that's great, but it's really assuming that everyone else is going to have the same type of exclusive pumping journey, which is just not the case. Just like every nursing journey is unique, so is every exclusive pumping journey. They'll have their own challenges, different supply, whether they can provide enough for their child, they're providing just enough for their child, or they're providing more than necessary for their child and creating a huge milk stash in their freezer. So when people respond to questions, often they'll answer based on what their experience was like. So for me, it was very important that I understood on a collective level what was happening. And so I created the LAR based on my background in human sexuality, which is based off of sexual attitude reassessments. And we do that to talk about really personal and intense topics in sexuality, for example. And we work through our feelings, we work through our thoughts, the history we might have about that topic. And that's kind of why I created it for lactation, specifically to exclusive pumping. And really what the purpose of that was for me at one level is to get more collective experiences and more exposure to different people's situation who exclusively pump, but also I had them film themselves talking about it, because I think there's a big component where when you actually see someone talking about it, that it is something that people really, really would love to learn more about and hear more about, and they feel it inside. So I think it was important for professionals to see that, and also a good piece for me to understand more about different people's experiences. And by doing that, I threw it out to a bunch of different groups, and within a week I had 70 people that were already willing to share their journeys on camera for me. So it was really quick. And then based on their applications, I kind of weaned it down to about 30. And then from there, I actually had 12 people fully do the project, and they answered a whole bunch of questions on film. Some of them even filmed their pumping sessions, pardon me. And really provided deep context into what they faced from health providers and what they face on a daily basis with going to work and how to manage the pumping, how they rotate their milk in and out with old milk, new milk, when they freeze it. Some had allergy issues. And I even had one individual who was an IBCLC who had to turn to exclusive pumping, and just the hardships that they had to face even within the IBCLC community. So it really was amazing. I mean, I'm almost just tearing up just thinking about the stuff, because it was, the contributors were amazing. And I'm really working on streamlining that to really provide that to lactation professionals. So I'm still in the process of getting everything organized. But that was really my first step, was to start creating that and working with exclusive pumpers to actually get something of that nature out, because it is so eye-opening that, I mean, if you don't cry, I don't know, maybe you don't have any feelings. I don't know. It was just so well done. I applaud them for their efforts and their work. But for me, that's really where I started. And so that's something that I hope to have available within the next few months is my full course, which will be essentially, it's called the Lactation Advancement Exclusive Pumping Framework. And that is something that I hope to launch, I would say, from now through, at this point, I would say early June is kind of my deadline for that. And it really would, I think, would benefit a lot of professionals to really cater to exclusive pumpers. And again, not looking to convert anybody. It's just how to support those who are already making the decision to go this route.
So the course is specifically for lactation professionals. It's not for women that are pumping?
That's right. Yeah. Right now,
Okay.
I think it was very important for me to work at the top and work your way down.
Right.
That's
You'll reach more women that way.
Yeah. And that's kind of what my thought process was, that essentially it has to start somewhere. And I know there's so many supporting Facebook groups and all that can kind of manage this in the meantime. But as soon as we get the professionals on board, that's where the difference will start to happen. You'll start having people that can offer in-person visits. I mean, eventually after COVID gets kind of settled down a little bit, you can have a lactation consultant that can support you in person versus everything being so virtual. Which some people just aren't comfortable, showing their breasts online. And I completely get it. Even though there's these secure platforms, some people just aren't comfortable with that idea. So it's really sad that you'll see that in the groups that I'm looking for someone in this area. Does anyone know anyone? And no one can really provide an appropriate resource. And then people are like, I'll help you online. And they're like, no, I just don't feel comfortable. So there is a huge need for it. But again, we just need the lactation professionals to kind of come on board.
Right. Yeah. And I think, it's so fascinating to me how, for me, when I went through chiropractic school, like you get like this basic training, right? And you're proficient, you're licensed when you get out there, but there's so much more to learn. And so much of my learning in the past 18 years as a chiropractor has been after chiropractic school, right? Although I remember when I was in school, I was like, oh my God, I'm learning everything. I know everything and that's it. And there's nothing else to learn. And then you like get into the real world and you work with people and you learn about individualization and, root cause and addressing people's needs. And it's fascinating, right? It's just like this whole world opens of other things that you want to learn and that are really interesting because you're using it, right? It's not just something didactic that you're learning in school, but when you actually get to work with a human and apply then and see results, that's exciting.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of like the feeling that's just missing from this community. For me personally, in the next month, I would say I'm personally going to try to launch kind of like an exclusive pumping support live kind of virtual support group, because that's really what we're missing. We have all these Facebook, support groups where you can just type in your question, but we're really missing that live other people are just like us component. And for me, we can go to La Leche meetings and we can do that, but we're always going to feel not exactly at home. And the reason why is because we're surrounded by other people who are at breast, which, as I mentioned, is kind of a sore subject for a lot of us. And not that we're saying in the sense of, people see someone nursing out there in public and they're like, oh, that's disgusting. That's not what this is. This is a totally different feeling that goes with seeing people nurse. It's a feeling of we're grieving with it ourselves, that seeing someone else doing it kind of brings up some feelings for us that we unfortunately have never been able to deal with because we don't have an outlet. So just kind of creating an actual support group that is going to help people talk about these feelings, because unfortunately those Facebook groups aren't letting us talk about that portion and all the other components that come with the support group. By having other real people talk to you at the same time is very therapeutic.
So you're saying that these exclusive pumping Facebook groups that you mentioned are popping up. You had said earlier they don't allow women to post any pictures of nursing or to even discuss nursing.
Yeah. It's hard because there's people stuck in the middle. There's so many different ranges of exclusive pumping, just like as in nursing, there's different kind of sentiments with each of it, especially with the different classes within it, within people who can provide enough, people who can't provide enough, and people who can provide more than plenty. Even those have their own dialect within each other as to kind of a sense of community, because each group understands a bit about what they're all going through, but the actual act of seeing someone else nurse can really bring up a lot for us. And that's just because never really having that opportunity to fully see it through for some is just too much. And those who never had a chance, by entering these groups and not showing nursing pictures or saying breastfeeding didn't work out for me, so this is what I'm doing. Sometimes even just saying that is not acceptable in some groups. You can't even say that you had a chance to breastfeed. So it just really don't have we just really don't have that outlet to discuss it in the way that we need to.
And I think that really is unfortunate, because I understand that for some women that could be quite sensitive, but at the end of the day, this is really about women processing their emotions, and all of these women are processing different emotions. And the only way you can do that is to be able to feel safe to share your feelings and this non-judgmental group.
Yeah.
And that actually feels quite judgmental.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just like I said, there's so many caveats. Like, for example, a good example are those who don't quite make enough. And then they see on these other groups, just Main Street groups, that, people are posting that they've made like enough for their child's supply in one pump, and then they can barely pump an ounce in the session. I mean, that becomes it also, like I said, there's just so many different dynamics that no one's really looking into. And that's kind of all the things I'm bringing into with these lactation consultants that I hope want to learn more, because frankly, it's just so big that no one's really taking the time to go through it. And I understand why they haven't. It's hard to piece all the information together and get that collective experience. But at the same time, it's just, there's so many pieces to it. I'm always surprised when people say they've attended a 1 hour, talk about exclusive pumping, that they think they might know it all. But really, there's so many pieces. There could be a whole 12-week thing on this. It's really just way more than people have ever taken an opportunity to look into.
Right. Yeah, it's quite deep. So I know you mentioned that this online program is going live this summer for professionals, but in the meantime, if there was women that were wanting to exclusively pump, they can reach out to you to do like a private session.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So my website is exclusivepumpinginstitute.com. And on there, I do provide EP support if anyone is interested. And basically, if it's flange sizing, that's pretty, easy to do. Usually that's typically what kind of appointments I usually get is with regards to sizing.
Is that done through Zoom? How do you do that?
I have a secure Google Meets platform is what I usually do. So that's typically how I offer my services.
Right, because it's quite private, right? Like
Yeah.
they're showing their breast to you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So they're showing you that. And then we usually will do a follow-up about a week after to see kind of where you're at. It's nothing that takes super long, but at the same time, that's typically what will happen. I know there are a lot of groups out there that will do it for you as well. I'm all about however you can exclusively pump and whatever meets your needs, that's what you got to do. But at the same time, I just recognize that there are a lot of individuals out there who just aren't insured individuals, and they're out there doing it for anybody. And I would just hate for something to happen. But at the same time, I think it's just basically the support is there's a lot of groups out there that will help you. And they're going to help you based on their experience. I love the collective perspective because that's what's going to matter here. So if anyone's interested, I do half an hour settings as well as 1 hour settings. But typically most people can get most of their questions kind of answered in that flange sizing appointment, to be honest with you. So it's usually
Which is 30 minutes long. You get the size, and then you also create like a help with a schedule as well.
That would be, if they wanted to do a scheduling, that would be like a separate appointment from the flange sizing, just because we have to go through some questions with regards to frequency of pumping and how old the baby is. And those things kind of play into factor as to how often we should be pumping, as well as breast capacity as well. So often, if you have a small breast capacity, then you might be pumping more often than someone who's really able to pump out quite a few ounces in a short session. So all those things kind of play into factor with regards to how you schedule out what you're going to be doing. But at the same time, I think it's just really important that people get into these groups for moral support, regardless of how you're going to get it. If you're not already on Facebook trying to get support, these are going to be people that are going to get you through. To be honest, I mean, I can only be there for 1 hour, just like lactation consultants can only be there for an hour of your week or so forth. It's really important to get that support that you can ask something every day. And Facebook is right now the best outlet. And soon enough, like I said, these support groups that I'm going to offer are going to be free. They're not going to cost anything. I really just need to help people get to the therapeutic piece that they're really missing inside those groups online, though.
Got it. So, what about women that are looking to exclusively pump and are wanting to increase their milk supply?
Mm-hmm.
Do you kind of go through suggestions for that?
Yeah, for sure. That would be more like a half an hour. Honestly, it'd be really rare that people actually would need a whole hour. Most people can get their questions answered in about a half an hour. It just involves a little bit of more history about them. Things that people don't often think about are breast reduction, breast augmentation. Like those types of questions are things that you might not feel comfortable discussing in an open group on Facebook. Those kind of things are just certainly things that are a little more private to some. And as I mentioned, with the human sexuality background, I totally get that. So that's why I really encourage, if you want to have a private session, then I'm all ears. So.
Right. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So do you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share with the audience?
Well, the biggest thing that I'd like to share is if you're already exclusive pumping, I hear I hear your frustration, and I'm really hoping that this will be our year to really start to break some barriers. I know that we are looking for advocacy, and I really hope to be, a person that can provide that to you. I know it's been a struggle for so long that I really hope that you're getting through this journey with the support you need. And if not, feel free to reach out at me at any point in time.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Ashton, this was so enlightening, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and share your passion for exclusive pumping.
Thank you, Dr. Lai. I appreciate you having me on here, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I just want to, thank you for sharing your sister's experience as well. I know one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that how many people, as I've been doing this, come out with saying, "Oh, so-and-so that I know exclusively pumps." So it is way more common than I think people are realizing.
I agree. And she ended up having a second child who she nursed for like 2 years.
Oh, there you go. Exactly.
So she had both experiences. But, once again, that's also an interesting thing is one woman can have multiple experiences depending on the relationship with that specific child, right? And
exactly.
that child's needs. So, there's so many different variables.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Ashton. If you're interested in learning more about exclusive pumping of breast milk, check out her website at exclusivepumpinginstitute.com. And for more information about my online program for preconception support for holistic lifestyle, you can check it out at my website at drlaurabrayton.com.